There we go. And then anybody who wants it, I'll put it up with a link on our page. So I'd like to start this out. The purpose of this meeting came about the other day when someone reached out to me and said, is there a VOR in Connecticut? And I said, actually, we used to have a program of state coordinators, and we don't really have one at this point. And we need to find a way to revive that. But I don't know that it needs to be with VOR or not. My concern is this woman, my brother was in a state-operated ICF in Connecticut, and I'm on the board of that group. And there are two other state-operated ICFs left, two other ones left in Connecticut, and we've never been able to get through to those people. And I know a couple of people who aren't in ICFs in Connecticut who are very involved in the state capitol, and a couple of them have been on these meetings before. And it occurred to me that we really need to reach out to more people besides those in our ICF in order to get through, to improve the system and improve communications. If you want somebody to support your facility and the people in it and the right to have a certain type of care, you need to support their care. You need to try to walk a few miles in their shoes in order to understand. And we should be doing that. We should be reaching out to others in our state. Rita Winkler is great at, coordinating people in Illinois in the ICF system. And it would be great if people who work with her also can reach out to folks who aren't in the ICF system. Jill Barker's two sons aren't in the ICF system, but she's been a member of VOR for longer than I have. And, that's what we need to do. So I put together an informal group where I just found a couple of names of people in different capacities, one in the other regional center, a couple of people who have their kids at home, somebody with severe autism, and put together a mailing list in order to get them together and told them this is not a group. This is not an ICF, a family group or anything like that. There are no dues. No one is in charge of this organization or anything like that. It's just a mailing list of people. And if we can, let's share information on this list, and then we'll spread it to the other people that we have who aren't on this list. Let's not make it a list of 50 people. Let's make it a list of 10 people in different capacities and leave it up to them to spread the word that they get from others. And I'm hoping that'll be an effective experiment. We'll see. I'll let you know in a year if anyone's still talking to each other. But it seems like the right thing. So I held one Zoom meeting so that people could introduce themselves. A couple of people couldn't make it. That was fine. But I don't want to be in charge of this group. I just want to have started it and let other people have equal shares in it. And hopefully that's a way to do this. But Jane Anthony pointed out to me years ago when North Virginia Training Center closed that they had a mailing list of 100 people. And within a couple of years, nobody was talking to each other because they were all separated in group homes all over the state. They had no organization. Their kids' needs were, if their kid needed something, they were in a group home, they called the ARC for it. There was no more organization. They lost that communications, they lost that unified voice, and they lost the power that a unified voice can give to you. So we got to find a way to get our voices back and amplify each other's voices. So on that topic or any other topic you want to talk about, have at it, folks. I'm going to let Rosalind run the meeting from this point on. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm in Illinois, and so one of the things that's happened, and this is for the people that have loved ones with severe autism. So the NCSA has and Jackie could talk about this, of course, has started this grassroots network working system for each state. And we have one in Illinois. And it is, we're still sort of figuring it out, but we have had a couple meetings on Zoom. I've met a couple people in person. And one of the things is I've learned is how isolated everyone feels. And a lot of these people, their children are at home with them still. And of course, their problem is they can't find services usually because of behaviors. But my son Teddy, he's in a group home in Springfield, Illinois, the capital, and there is no group. I felt very isolated here in Chicago, and there are groups here, but they're more geared to high functioning. So that's just been my experience. Now I have met people just through sort of my advocacy work. I know my state senator well, and our state representative, and I've met a couple other people, but it's just sort of been hit and miss for me. So does anyone else want to share their experience or any suggestion? Irene? Oh, Irene, do you want to unmute? I thought you had your.
Unmute.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to start my video too.
Okay.
In terms of I came in a little bit late, so I didn't hear the whole thing, but in terms of connecting with other people, it's extremely difficult when you have a kid in a group home.
Mm-hmm.
The providers really don't want the parents networking with each other. And I started a Facebook group for people who have their adult children in day rehabilitation. And the problem is, you know, the providers keep on trying to join, and they say that they have, you know, it's supposed to be just for families, and they join, and I have to kick them out, and then, you know, you have people feeding information into the providers. It's not private, but people are afraid to say whatever it is they want to say, because it gets back to the provider, it gets back to the DDS, and there's retribution for saying things that are honest if they're not positive. So it's very, very difficult to network, very, very difficult to find support, and, you know, especially if you're having a hard time. I happen to know a lot of folks, so I think I'm well supported, and COFAR is just fantastic. But for the majority of people, people are very isolated, very, very isolated.
Mm-hmm. So when the group home that my son was in before, we had a parent group, and it was great. We had people would come. This is before Zoom calls, and people would come from all over the state and that was great, you know, to meet all those people. But the people that ran the group home, they really, like you said, they hated it, and it sort of folded after that. But the other thing that I'm going to do, there is a group I'm not that really familiar with, but it's an autism group, and they're holding a rally in Springfield in April. So I'm hoping to make connections that way. So I'm just sort of, anything that comes up, I'm trying to just sort of connect with it and see. And one thing that happened that was good in Illinois, so recently they tried to cut, I think it was $37 million for the budget for direct support professionals. And of course, we were all like really upset, and a lot of people wrote their legislators, and they did put it on pause. So it was kind of one of the few positive things I've seen, because people were so up in arms at that. Now, what will happen in the long run, I don't know, but it just goes to show me how essential this all is. I mean, there is some power in numbers, I think. So anyone else want to say anything? Oh, Jill?
Yeah, I was recently I don't know if I was listening to a podcast or I read a book review about a person who was trying to counter propaganda in Nazi Germany before and during World War II. And it was very interesting because he was talking about the ways not that you don't when you don't get through to people, by lecturing them or telling them they're wrong or whatever. But what is really helpful is giving them that people want agency, meaning that they want to have information that they can act on and actually do something to try to improve their situation. So like they would tell German soldiers how to desert from the army and things like that. But anyways, it's interesting because I know that that's organizations that I've been involved in. That's one of the things that we always tried to do was to have information available on when a problem came up. These are the words you need to use when you're talking to the school or the community mental health, whatever the agency was. And here is what some things that you can do that will at least get things moving as far as trying to change a situation. So for instance, my son Ian has been they're trying to drop him from Medicaid, which is just so stupid. But anyway, it has to do with their renewing, their reviews of people. And after Danny died, I had no, I hadn't realized that Ian was getting too much money from Social Security to qualify for SSI. Turns out that's okay. He was getting enough to cover his, the expenses that I had to pay for him. And then I didn't realize that it was good that would affect Medicaid, because in Michigan, SSI automatically qualifies you for Medicaid. So there are other ways to get around this. I think I'm still trying to figure that out. But there was one piece of information that I remembered hearing about a couple of different times that I hadn't had to use, but that was that if you appeal a decision by Medicaid, and you do it within a certain length of time before the service is actually dropped, or within a couple of weeks of it being dropped, that they have to, once you've appealed it, they have to continue the services until you go through a hearing. So, it's just one piece of information that's really helpful. The other thing is that the one part of Medicaid that they still want to give Ian is family planning. And this is, it's just unbelievable. Like, what, and I want people to actually have to look at him and see him in his wheelchair and, ask him questions that he won't be able to answer. And all of, there's lots of things that I need these people to do. But anyway, so I'm trying to get this straightened out, but I think that he's covered until we get through a hearing. But it's just unbelievable what
I just want to chime in here
Mhm.
about the Medicaid renewal process.
Yeah.
Here in Massachusetts, the form that we have to fill out for Medicaid renewal is not adapted to people, with disability. It's as if it's for elderly people who need a nursing home care, and they don't adapt the form to people with disabilities,
Yes.
young people with disabilities. So a lot of the questions they ask are, people don't know how to answer them, because it's like, well, does do you live alone? Well, he lives in a group home.
Yeah.
But the correct answer is yes, he lives alone.
Yes. A family of one.
A family of one, and he lives
Right.
alone, even though he doesn't live alone.
Yeah.
you know, and there are many questions on the form like that, that
Mhm.
I don't understand how, you know, with all of this inclusion and everything, why we don't have a form that accommodates, you know,
Mhm.
the needs of these people so that you can actually understand the form.
The other thing that I'm learning is that the people, when I talk to people from Medicaid, they have a very narrow range of information. It's like there was a pre-hearing conference which got all messed up because I thought it was supposed to be in person and they said no, it's a Zoom call. But anyway, the manager from the group home brought Ian, and she was delivering some information that she had. But one of the problems was that my husband and I are co-plenary guardians for Ian, so we cover everything. And there you have to go through a different process to convince Medicaid that you are the legal representative for this person. And I know it's not easy because I tried to do it with Danny. I never got it confirmed from the state that they could talk to me, because they would for instance, they would call the group home and they would say, I'd like to speak to Ian Barker. And the group home says, well, he can't talk. And they say, well, I need to talk to him. I can't talk to you about this because we need permission from him to talk to you about these problems with Medicaid. And you just get into this cycle of just unbelievable, this fantasy world or whatever they're living in. And the people who are, you know, who answer the phones or make the calls only know, you know, what they have somebody on a list that says they're not on Medicaid anymore, and that's about all that they know. So it's very difficult to get through these agencies, but we are trying.
I mean,
But-
I'm amazed at how clueless people are. So I know we've had people ask Teddy, you know, Teddy, what kind of job would you like? Well, he doesn't know what they're talking about, you know, or what do you like to do in your free time? You know, he's like, I want a cookie. I mean, that's his standard line. So it's just like, and I know that we've talked about this before, how and it's so important to have these people visit the centers or the group homes. Like I'll brag on Rita a little bit. She had was able to get the Lieutenant Governor of Illinois to visit Murray home. And I don't know how many times you asked, Rita, but it was many times. And I just
3 years, but we got it done.
yeah,
Right?
and I just think
Yes,
we
got it done.
just so clueless. And it's not like
Totally.
I can bring Teddy to their office because I mean, God knows what he'll do, you know.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I just think, you know, I know if anybody has a question about Olmsted, and what we are doing a lot of the time is fighting the propaganda from
Right.
other
Yes.
people who
Yes.
don't want us who want to tell people what they're supposed to need and want, and don't ask for this and ask for that. But see, you want to give people the freedom to use what they know about the person, to apply it to what they think they need. So so I know that with questions about Olmsted, I always say, go look at the VOR website. There's all kinds of information about Olmsted, and they figure out that what they're told about Olmsted is not what Olmsted actually says. So, but it's good to have those sort
Let
of.
me interject here, because you said that you offer advice on Olmsted, whether you refer to the VOR website or not. What I'm hoping is that we can all become resources for other people, whether it's through blogs, whether it's through, you know, because Jill has a great blog. Jackie, I can't keep up. I can't read as fast as Jackie writes. And, and Irene pointed out that COFAR blog is very helpful to the people in Massachusetts. We need to be resources for one another and for other people. We need to open up these doors however we can. Harris had a question in the chat, and Harris, feel free to, ask your question out loud, but I'll pass it on for you. He wanted to know that VOR used to have a state coordinator program, which we, have not had the resources to keep up with. Jackie's starting one, and other people with National Council on Severe Autism. A-Teams is trying to put one together, and he asked if we shouldn't all join together. I don't know if the different organizations are going to want to necessarily share with another organization that, organizations are organizations, they have their way of doing things, but that doesn't prevent us from sharing with one another that, hey, I'm a member of National Council on Severe Autism, and I learned that here in my state, such and such is happening, and I'll share it with A-Teams. The more we can do to help one another and to interact with one another, the better. So I see Mary has her hand up, and Rose put something in the chat saying she has something to share that they're doing in Pennsylvania. So
Okay, how about Mary? And then Rose.
I just wanted to mention, my brother lives in an intermediate care facility. And over the years, just like across the nation, we have no new admissions. So with some people moving out, the people living there are now getting elderly. There's less people there, so therefore less family members involved. And many of the parents have passed on, and even the siblings are in their mid-70s and 80s. So my point being is, even though my brother lives in an intermediate care facility, and I am the president of that association, I do try to contact people across the state. It's like pulling teeth, though. So it's a little frustrating that our parent organization, it's much smaller. We don't have as big a voice as we used to. And it's become more difficult. So just adding that about an ICF. Thanks.
So I'm just curious, so why is it more different? I mean, I know people are getting older, but there's other, oh, okay, I see, because they're not getting new admissions. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention in Illinois, so they won't, we have this big organization, it's on Facebook, it's called IPAD, Illinois Parents of Adults with Developmental Disabilities, but they won't let me put anything on about National Council on Autism, because they said we believe in shock therapy. So, you know what I mean? We have to fight stuff like that, which is kind of irritating. Anyway, oh, Rose, did you want to say something?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm pretty new to VOR. I'm in Pennsylvania, and I apologize not putting my video on. My son is still at home. He's severely autistic, and he's been having some moments lately. So I'm kind of moving all around my house as I'm talking. I don't want to make you dizzy.
We all understand.
With my
No
video
apologies
moving all over the
necessary.
place.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes
But-
we have kids naked in the background. We
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, exactly.
No.
Until Dad gets home, it's me and it's mano y mano here. But just to tell you what I look like, I'm a gray-haired mama like some of you here. And I recently started something in Pennsylvania back in the first of the year, actually. I created a Facebook group called Families for a Better Way. And we are still fairly small. We're under 100 members. But we're really utilizing it to try to build people's capacity as advocates, like helping them understand. We're really trying to reach younger people, people with kids that are just kind of moving into the late transition years in school. And what we're doing is trying to just give them resources for how to be good advocates. We're sharing, issues that are going on in our state, which I think many of you know, Pennsylvania is something else when it comes to this settings rule. So what we're trying to do is just really build people's capacity. Our governor just recently came out with a budget that had a whopping amount of money proposed for DSP wages. They have a multi-growth strategy that they're trying to work on to take people off of our emergency wait list for waivers. All of these things are wonderful, and we're really trying to help families, get connected with the legislative process that's happening so they understand when to contact their legislator. We're trying to have people who are in the pockets of the state where they really have the movers and shakers in terms of the state legislator who are actually doing things and proposing bills to help our population. We're trying to really kind of say, like, let's get you going here. Let's help you. What resources do you need to go advocate to that legislator? We're providing sample template letters of things. I've shared my, several letters that I've sent to my representatives who are not the movers and shakers in the state. But, still just the whole process of helping people build their capacity as advocates. One thing that we're working on right now, and I'm actually putting the PowerPoint slides together for this, and it's a little bit of a risky proposition, but we have, because we really want to try to get younger families involved in this, and they don't know what's heading in their direction. They don't know what falling off that educational cliff is going to look like. So we're trying to put together a series of maybe 3 to 6, if we can get it together over the next 9 months, Zoom sessions where we're really going to market it heavily to the younger groups that are out there. We have local task forces here in Pennsylvania. They're kind of groups of families that are rallying, or I wouldn't say rallying, but they're really focused on the right to education in Pennsylvania. We're going to try to market to them. And what we're going to do with these is we're going to give them a brief presentation on an aspect of the adult system. So we're going to start with, how do you get an adult waiver in Pennsylvania? And then we're going to have a family panel. These are like, this is our lived experience, right? Everybody in the autism world knows that's the buzzword now, the lived experience. So as family advocates, we're going to say, this is our lived experience in trying to wait for a waiver for our kid, trying to get into that system. Once we're into that system, what are you going to face? That kind of stuff. We have another one that we're going to do about how rights change. I don't know how it is in every other state, but in Pennsylvania, it's absolutely absurd what happens on these human rights committees that are established, where an individual can just say, no, I don't want to go to whatever today, or no, or yes, I want to eat the entire bag of lollipops. And the staff says, okay, they express that interest. We have to give it to them, because otherwise we're going to get slapped with a rights violation, because they're adults. They can make those decisions for themselves. So we're going to do one coming up fairly soon after this first one. We'll reassess. And then the second one we're hoping to do is on how your rights as a family member change. And, the whole focus here is just to try to really build people's capacity as advocates, give them tools, help them support one another, and try to get people to connect so they could start going to see state legislators together and really just kind of, come together at the right times. We're trying to help them understand the legislative process a little bit too. I'll stop there because I know I've been rambling.
Thank you, Rose. I mean, that's a lot of stuff you're doing. It sounds great, actually. So Arita, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll speak very quickly. Rosalind was talking about that group that doesn't allow her to post anything about the severe autism. But what's very interesting, probably in the last 3 years, at least 10 people from that organization have come to me in VOR Mar to try to get their child into Murray Center. And sometimes they'll say, but please don't tell anybody, because we're not supposed to want our child to live in an SODC or they're all supposed to live in the community. And out of those 10, probably 6 or 7 have moved to Murray or another state center. So they may say those things on that site, but I think as their children are transitioning out of high school, these were basically younger parents, and they're beginning to realize, a group home is just not going to work, and they can no longer keep their child at home, quote, in this wonderful world. So anyway, they're learning from us too, Rosalind. So we just got to keep on plugging away. So thank you, Rosalind, for what you do.
Oh, thank you, Rita. Oh, the other thing I noticed on this site, when Rita puts something up, they'll only put it up for like 5 minutes. And then it's gone. So,
It disappears.
Yeah. Anyway, we're working on it.
We are.
The problem is it's such a large group. I think there's 9,000 people, and
Yeah,
they
it's
do
too
provide
many.
a lot of resources. So it's just very frustrating to us, I guess. Anyway, who else? Does anyone have any other suggestions? Jill again,
Yeah,
and
one
then Joanne.
thing with Rose, she's talking about her group in Pennsylvania, is to talk about guardianship, because when a person has a guardianship is always presented as this terrible thing that removes rights from people. Well, if a person has no way of communicating or expressing what they want or what they're thinking, then they are just at the whim of anybody who's around them that are really the ones who are making the decisions if they don't have the capability to do that. But there's a lot of push out there to discourage parents from going after guardianship, and guardianship is one way that probably you could prevent an adult from eating pizza for every meal for the next year. You get things written into plans and how you circumvent that when they will always say they want pizza, and you need to know that they're getting other things besides.
Yeah, we do see that, but we actually see in our state a real trend in the younger families of going towards guardianship. But we also find stories that we hear and share amongst the parents who have children in group homes, that the human rights or the staff will say, well, we know that you're the guardian and we know that, this is in the plan, but if they want this, we have to give it to them. I mean, I've had people in my home, a behavior specialist, say that if he wants to have this, we have to give it to him. And yeah, I mean,
That's
so
what they hear.
that's what they say, right? But so parents just go, oh, okay, I don't know what to do then. And, we recently had some legislation in Pennsylvania that our disability rights of PA pushed pretty hard to get passed. That's actually, tightening up and restricting a little bit more the guardianship, guidance and laws in our state. So I think they did that in response to this younger generation just pushing. As soon as their kid turns 18, a lot of them are filing for guardianship. They want to get it right away.
Yeah. Good.
Joanne?
Okay, yes. Before I say anything, I just want to congratulate Jackie Cansier, who is now the policy director for National Council on Severe Autism. I think that's a great position for you, Jackie, and we look forward to working more with you. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And Rose, that's great too for what you're doing. I think it's so important to network like this, the way we're doing it. So in New Jersey, there's a couple of us, Sam, Elaine Ferguson, and a couple others from some of the developmental centers that try to link together whenever anything's going down. We'll call each other and try to attend meetings together to do that. But the other thing in it, and I had nothing to do with this, but that I thought was was we have a woman in New Jersey who has her daughters at home with her, and she has been maintaining a Facebook page. She picked it up. She didn't create the page. It was created by another woman who unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago. But it seems to be a great source of information, primarily for, well, it goes across the board. It's people that are looking at self-directed services, and then people who have their individuals in group homes or at home. And then also some of the developmental center stuff gets posted there too. So I don't know if you have Facebook pages that you can do this with. And I think there's a few in New Jersey, a few different ones in New Jersey, but there's one in particular, New Jersey Parents of Developmentally Disabled Adults. So if you ever want to look that up and see, and families can pose any kind of question on it, and usually anyone who has information will jump in and answer, and so it seems to be working pretty well. But and I want to echo what Jill said. Guardianship is so important. That was the only thing that gave us some say when they closed the developmental centers in New Jersey as to, where our individual would go and what they were allowed to do. And they will try to talk you out of it and talk about supported decision-making and on and on. And but you have rights. And I guess if we can continue to talk like this and everybody understands what their rights are, then it'll be one way to keep them at bay and do what's right for our individual. But talking and reaching out is so important. Unfortunately, we've seen it happen that it isn't until something bad is going to happen with a closure or moving somebody or something like that, then people come around. But try and maintain contact lists the best you can, and keep in touch with everyone. And thank you all for being here and doing this. This is so important. Thanks. Thanks, Roxanne.
Yeah, the other thing is, like, my legislators, my local legislators, they really know me now. They're sick of me because I go to every meeting, and it's like, I mean, they're nice. I mean, they're not that interested, but they do listen, because I've been there so much now that they just kind of have no choice. They're just down the street. So that's important too, I think, to go to meetings if you can. And I know it's harder, it's a little easy for me because my son's he doesn't live with us. But anyway, who else wants to say something? Okay, Sybil. Okay, you have to unmute.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it was Rose that said there's an Illinois group of parents called iPad on Facebook. What's the real name of it?
Illinois Parents of Adults with Developmental Disabilities.
Right.
Yeah, they have a very active Facebook group.
Okay. Primarily, I became interested in VOR at the very beginning, 40 years ago, because of my son, who is profoundly disabled.
Are you in Illinois?
No, I'm in Iowa.
Oh, you're in Iowa. Okay.
Iowa, and if you may have read that our facility where my son's having lived all these years is closing.
Right.
They just decided to close. So fortunately for me, he got to go to a nursing home right here in my town, where he is receiving, really, really good care. And I'm grateful. Of course, they're trying to say, well, would you like to move into a different facility, clear across the state? And I said, no, I would not. This is good for me. It's good for his dad. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to get there. Anyway, the other thing that has happened along the way is my only grandson has autism, and he lives in Illinois.
You muted accidentally, Sybil.
Okay, sorry about that. He works. He has a pretty active social program there. They live in Lombard. And I noticed that the parents keep in connection through these social programs. Jackson's a swimmer, and they do stuff like that. And he's pretty high functioning. He still needs a lot of help. Like last week, he called his boss a jerk. So we'll have to see what's going to happen. And that's just so not like him. He's such a nice boy. I said to somebody, I think I probably was really a jerk, or Jackson wouldn't have said it. But anyway, he's going to always need help. And his parents are his guardians, and they've done everything just right. But I did think I would try to hook him up with that iPad group. I think they would be really good with that.
Yeah, they like, if he's high functioning, they'll like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
it would probably be good for him. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so
Roslyn, I just wanted to piggyback a little on something you said about how you're constantly talking to your legislators and so on and so forth, and remind folks that unless you live in Rhode Island or Delaware, getting to the state capitol is not easy for a lot of our folks. And whatever we can do to share what's going on in the state capitol with others in our state can be very important. we don't learn what's going on unless we constantly are looking at the DD site or whatever in our state. I mean, there's no way to know, oh, there's a meeting of such and such. Unless you're on a DD council or something like that, it all just passes you by. And we need to inform one another of those things. Even if you say, you know, the legislature met this week to talk about issues of that I thought were going to be DD. They ended up talking about addiction through the whole thing and didn't mention us once. Somebody's going to want to know that. That's useful information. The legislature isn't paying attention to us. It's just as important as the legislature is doing something good for us or something bad for us, against us. So sharing that kind of information, especially when you live in a state where you know, like Rose in Pennsylvania, there are a lot of people who can't get to Harrisburg. So, you know, these things really can help to increase the networking capability that we have.
The nice thing that we found, Hugo, is when we had the Appropriations Committee wrangling over the Department of Human Services budget a couple weeks ago, those were all live streamed. So we actually posted for families in our group, like, this is happening now, you know, the live stream where they're going to be talking about the Department of Human Services budget, and, you know, listen, if you can, listen in. I mean, that you can do that from home. You can do that from the comfort of your own home. And that was really helpful to some families because they got to see, you know, which legislators were in favor and which weren't. And then a lot of these state, we wound up encouraging people to contact the chairperson for this appropriations committees for both the House and Senate. Then, you know, what that does is it gets you, you know, just to let them know, like, you know, we're interested in having this budget passed so we can get these services for our kids. And what wound up happening is, you know, then you get on their mailing list and you get to see what they're talking about, you know, and what their summary and analysis was of the appropriations discussions. So that's been really helpful to some of our families, mainly for education, but also advocacy. You know, some of the parents went forward from that and said, well, my legislator said this during the Appropriations Committee, and I contacted him or her and either challenged or praised them for it.
Yeah, something else, our federal congressman in our district has something every few months called Ask the Congressman, and it's on Zoom. And I've been to that, and of course, brought up my son. Everyone else was talking about migrant issues, which are of course important, but at least, you know, so I think people that can't leave home, if they have opportunities like that. So much is on Zoom now. So in certain ways, it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, anyone else have anything to say?
Hey, Rosalind.
Hi, Jackie.
Yeah, so, and I think as everybody here was kind of talking about today, that, you know, the thing to keep in mind is that our community is very fractured right now, and that it was designed that way since Olmsted and this whole deinstitutionalization, right? So if you have a child that has really profound disabilities, and especially if they're dually diagnosed, where, you know, there's a behavior component to it, and they have profound intellectual disability, I don't care what state they live in, chances are very high that they have very limited options, and they're probably pretty isolated. So they might be in an ICF, they might be in a group home, they might be in a parent home, right? Like there's just not a good fit for our kids in general. So we do need to kind of spread out and explore options. And like I was saying to Harris in chat, one of the ideas I had, you know, recently was expanding in even further outside of severe and profound autism, outside of profound ID. The rare disease community is huge. And there's a lot of rare diseases that very much, you know, they're genetic identifiers for people in our community and things like that. And the dual diagnosis community also, but there's a lot of different organizations that are aligned with our goals. Now, it's important that we all exist. We all have our own niches, and our policies will differ in some areas, but the things we can agree on, we get all of them together, we're bigger than the ARC. We're bigger than disability rights, right? Like, and additionally, there's a lot of cross section there. So if we start pulling in some of the rare disease organizations like SINGF Research Fund and Fragile X and Angelman's and those kind of things, well, some of their members too might be in the disability rights side and in those other organizations that really just need a perspective wake-up call, right? Because I don't believe that there are many disability rights advocates out there who are nefarious. I think they are extraordinarily misguided, almost have been like a cult mentality where, you know, there's all these cutesy cliches and they're just regurgitating them because they've seen them actually work for other people with disabilities, what I call the more palatable disabilities, right? People who are just like, oh, well, they would have been called simple back in the day, but they're generally really happy. And, you know, they're not scary. They're not biting their chunks out of their hands and banging their heads and aggressing at anybody. They're not still in diapers when they're in their 30s, you know, so these are palatable disabilities that people can feel good about hanging out with them, right? There is always going to be a part of the population that will remain dependent lifelong. And I really feel like we need to take the narrative back on that, that you can be a great disability advocate. You can have advanced great policy for wide swaths of people. But if you do not have direct experience with this side of the population, whatever you are advocating on, whatever might be right over here, cannot apply over here. This population solely needs people who have the direct lived experience with them to speak for them, because it is truly unfathomable. Would any of us believe some of the stories that we've lived through if we didn't live through them? Really? And so that's what we need to keep in mind, that this is a fractured community, but we can bring it together. You know, if we start, like I said, forming some type of alliance, start reaching out to other people, expand beyond our boundaries. It doesn't just have to be ICF or group homes or parent homes, whatever it might be. And Hugo was talking about, you know, unless you're on the DD council, you may not know. I can tell you I'm on the statewide planning and policy council, multiple different committees, and there's a lot of crap I still don't know within the state. Like we don't even know on the statewide council. So there's just no way to know everything that's going on other than community, you know, really making yourself known, reaching out any way you can.
Mhm.
Jackie,
Thank you,
I don't know
Jackie.
how many of our people were on the call that the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities had last week. But when you talk about it's a fractured community and we need to stand up, it's difficult for us to stand up against organizations, federal agencies that are stacking the deck against us. It really turned out to be the President's Committee for People who self-advocate with intellectual disabilities. They drove the conversation. They were empowered by the ACL. The ACL claims, oh, we don't make anything happen. We just facilitate the meetings. But the meetings always end up with the ACL's current agenda. And we know who's writing the agenda for the meetings, who's picking and approving of the people who get on the committee, and so on. And this is what we're up against.
I agree with you, but who is pushing them, right? Because the numbers are speaking
industry.
for them. It's the ARC, it's disability rights, it's the
Yes,
Council on
exactly.
Developmental Disabilities.
Yep.
They're big and they're huge.
It's
We
an
need to
industry.
collectively come together and make those numbers.
Exactly. There's an industry. There's money involved. And they're the ones who vote for, you know, they support the campaigns for the politicians to keep them in office. Also, there are people embedded in the system. You notice the members of the DOJ who were closing ICFs, members of ACL didn't change over the years between administrations. Those people are embedded in the organizations. The people who are closing ICFs at DOJ are the same people under Obama, under Trump, and under Biden. They haven't left those positions. They've had different administrators appointed by each of those presidents, but that's it. That's the window dressing. The real system, they talk about embedded in the deep state or something. If there is such a thing, that's what we're up against. It's the people who are embedded in those committees. The ACL has, stopped. They're no longer the administration for community living. They're the administration for people with intellectual disabilities. They are the administration for community living, and that's what they do. In one of his speeches, presentations, Javier Becerra introduced Alison Barkoff as his messiah for independent living, and then called her his quarterback at the ACL. This is what, this is what we're up against. So you're right. We need to get together with National Organization of Rare Diseases and all the groups that are in them. We need to speak to other people. I'm working with a different coalition now on the workforce crisis, and it's got folks that we haven't agreed with in years agreeing with us. And I insisted that this workforce coalition represent all of the DSPs and not just those in HCBS. And I got some blowback for that, but we came to an agreement that if we're going to protect the system, we have to protect all of the people who receive services and all of the people who give them the services, or else it's going to fall apart worse. So this is what we have to do. And you're right, we can outnumber them.
Yeah.
But it's going to be difficult to get our folks in DD councils. I know folks who've been in them, and they were the only person allowed from an ICF, and other people just dismissed them. And oh, okay, go ahead, say your piece about ICFs. Okay, now back to business. We got a bigger fight, and it shouldn't be that way. We're the ones who have the most difficult people to address their problems. We should have others looking out for us and saying, I will help you. Instead, they're saying, no, I'm going to help myself. You go do whatever you have to do.
Well, that's kind of depressing.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it
It's
can
okay.
be sometimes. No, I get it.
No.
it definitely can
Okay,
be.
the other thing is, I don't know if anyone went to the seminar on Zoom that NCSA it was called How Policies Threaten the Most Severely Disabled. And they were kind of, it was Ashley Kim who was speaking, and she kind of presented it as a human rights issue that why are disabled people, why do they can only live in group homes? And she mentioned some things like, retirement communities, where everyone, has a common theme. And she said some actor that just started some community for foster children. So that's maybe just another way to look at it too, or to present it as a human rights issue. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. I don't know if anyone saw that.
Yeah.
Harris, did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jill.
It was good because she had, so for instance, she looked at a village that had been set up for foster children. And, this is the way it looks. It has so many cottages and nice activity areas. And she said the exact same thing for people with developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities would be considered an institution. And you look at assisted living facilities that have all kinds of amenities. And that also, if you did the same thing for people with intellectual disabilities, it would be called an institution and you would be told you can't have that. So I thought it was a good presentation that she did.
Too, it just gives us maybe a little bit more ammunition.
Yeah.
Anyway, Harris, I thought you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Back to, I guess, one of the overhead questions that was asked, and that is, what are ways to get information that you can act on? Part of this has to do, I believe, with the need to filter information. There is so many gigatons of information out there that I feel a need to filter that information. And one of the ways that I do that, I'm an associate member of our state providers association. Now, I can't be a regular member and don't want to be because of the dues, but they put out newsletters that tell all the providers, here's what the state is getting ready to revise as far as policy, etc. It's kind of like what they do at the federal level. They're letting people know that a policy is about to come out. Do you want to comment on it? And I've found that by getting news feeds, not only from VOR, but also from the Ohio Providers Association for my state, I become very aware of any kind of language changes in the Ohio Revised Code that's going to be changed regarding any subject I'm interested in. For example, guardianship. So, you know, I may scour their newsletters for that particular thing. So every state has a providers association. I recommend, in addition to VOR, that you might want to become an associate member of those organizations so you can get their news feeds. That's all.
Chris, anyone else have something to say?
I can talk a little bit about advocacy.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
My sister is in a ICF run by Clearbrook in Illinois, rather large organization. And as of about a year ago, they actually, the organization hired a professional to be the advocacy go-to guy. And he has organized trips to Springfield. He has organized breakfast meetings with our local state legislators. And he has been, in part, one of those who has been successful in helping get our DSPs a fairly decent pay raise in Illinois. I'd also say that with regard to advocacy, we used to have a parents and guardians group in the particular 16-bed facility where my sister lives. We were very active for a while. And as was mentioned in this meeting, the people died and moved away and whatnot, and we sort of petered out, and now we're trying to make a comeback. We still do some very useful things like run a collection at Christmas time for bonuses for our DSPs, strictly from us, the very appreciative people that are serving our loved ones. Guardianship, absolutely. I don't understand what's going on. I was told at one time I had to get my sister under guardianship. I did. And ever since that time, I have to sign a paper for every flu shot and every other kind of shot, many she gets. And yet I read stuff about an effort being made to have people make their own decisions regardless of what the guardian says or does. Yeah, what else? Yeah, that's about it. Be happy to answer any comments.
So where is your daughter in Illinois? What?
My
Oh,
sister
your
is,
sister, I mean.
yeah, she's with Clearbrook. Their headquarters
Oh,
are in,
Clearbrook. Okay. 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 I just
Hall-
didn't hear that. Okay.
yeah, her
Okay.
particular facility is in Rolling Meadows.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know of it. Right. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, one other
Eh,
thing I'd like to mention here
Oh,
is
sure.
with respect, I mean, I'm speaking for myself as a citizen of Illinois. It'd be kind of nice if I had a list of people in VOR who are from Illinois and their contact information. Because if something really, really important comes up, it'd be nice for us to kind of circle the wagons and see what we can do about it.
I agree. I'm going to put my email on the chat for you.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything?
Anita has her hand up.
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, about where the guardianship patterns are coming from, it has been stated by the United Nations that they want to do away with all forms of surrogate decision makings, whether it's conservatorship or guardianship. And so it's just part of their everybody's all the same ideas about the ideal society. And I guess the administration's picked up on that and they're transmitting it to the states. Anyway, thanks.
Mhm.
I think that's ridiculous, frankly, but thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Okay, this is Rita Winkler. I'm a National Certified Guardian, and last October went to the National Guardianship Association conference. And I also went 2 years ago or 4 years ago, and they have made really a big turnaround. 4 years ago, everything was supported decision making. Everything was getting rid of pretty much guardianship. It went on and on. This time, there was very little said. There was one meeting that was held about it. But I think those people who have gone to getting away from guardianship have realized how difficult it is for these people to, advocate for themselves or whatever, especially when severe medical issues come up. So I'm just praying and hoping that the trend continues to get to some kind of common sense. I mean, they're not against supported decision making, but they were really not pushing it like they had 4 years ago.
That's good to hear. Thanks, Rita.
Mhm.
Common sense seems to be
Common sense is,
short
yeah.
supply.
Yeah, and we really need to keep pushing. I know I had a conversation today with the leader of kind of the anti-us group in Tennessee, and they're all about saying things like, well, this is not the way, when they're talking about the fighting against guardianship or fighting against congregate settings or whatever they're fighting against. They love the term, but they'll say, we acknowledge that there's problems, but this is not the way. And we really need to push them. Then what is the way? Because you've had 25 years since Olmsted, and my 20-year-old daughter is more isolated than if the state-run hospitals are still open. So whatever your way is clearly isn't working. And we have to get past, you have to challenge them when they're like, oh, well, we'll start a committee or we'll start a task force. Enough talk already. These families need urgency, right? And so we're aging out, right? How many of us are going to continue to be able to do what we're doing for how many more years? We need to have solutions now, and we really push urgency, and we need to challenge them when they say this isn't the way, or this is, these really loose ideological concepts. Force them to come up with a substantive solution or sit down. Right? That's really where it comes down to. Come up with a substantive solution or stop talking.
Anyway, Jackie, you're not aging out. You got a lot of time left, unlike the rest of us. Anyway, but thanks. Who else wants to say anything? No one? Rach from Tennessee, I've heard you speak before at some seminars.
I think Rach, there.
Well, I have a younger child, so we're talking about a 14-year-old. But
Okay.
one thing I can tell you is your guys' road is my road. I already see it. I'm just back here behind you. And I have seen it very early and have been trying to, understand it from my state level, which we're dead last in every state, in Tennessee. We're just the bottom of the barrel.
Oh,
So
I thought
really,
Mississippi was last and everything.
No, Tennessee
they
likes
might
to
be
be
fighting over
second.
some spots.
And
for sure.
Illinois is like 48, I think,
Yeah.
or 49.
Hey, I'm in Arkansas. We usually have that one. So
Oh, okay.
We're 51st out of 51st. I don't know who the other one is, but we're worse than 50th of 50th. We're
Okay.
51st of 51st.
I guess good to know, right?
Yeah, we're the
I thought
caboose.
Puerto Rico had that extra
Oh, okay.
worse than than the other states. They have it bad in Puerto Rico. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, they do.
They
And
they
so
really
it's-
get the boot.
No, but it is good to hear from the younger group too. And I know in Illinois there are some younger people in the NCSA grassroots, and they're really, a lot of them are with younger kids, and their kids, they're having to send them out of state because they can't even find a school placement for them. So
Right.
well,
So
And
I
Terry
have a
Johnson,
question.
go ahead.
I
Well,
had a
I was
question.
just going to do a quick shout out to Terry
Oh, go
Johnson
for it.
that you guys do have really good communications within your state. I
yeah,
know
I agree. I
Carol
think
Sherman has kept up
Yep.
a good network, and
Carol has
that's
been priceless.
yeah, that's the benchmark in many ways for keeping those communications with other people.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rach. I'm sorry.
I was wondering if anyone, I mean, I know I've heard a couple talk about Illinois today. Have anyone heard of Robert Farley Jr.?
yes, he's a lawyer.
The book?
I just got his name from someone.
Yep. I've been
but-
trying to get, I just put his link in there.
Okay. Oh, good.
I think he may have moved out to Colorado as well, or may have a practice there as well. I'm not sure.
Okay, I've heard he's still in Illinois, but I haven't made contact with him yet. But
I have made contact
oh,
with
good.
him, and he is willing to speak with us on relation to matters in Tennessee. But because you bring the Illinois up so much, I just wondered if we could reach out and bring him in. His story is fabulous. I mean, he basically started suing the state of Illinois, and I don't know how many times he sued and won, but it's been more than once. And he's done some in Colorado too, and one other state. So he must have reciprocity in more than one state, from what I can tell.
Okay, so I may send you a private message
But
about
you
him.
go for it for sure.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
It's 5:12, so we're a little over our time. Do you want to wrap it up, Hugo? Unless anyone else has something to say, or we
Sure.
could go on all
I would
day.
just like to thank everybody for participating today. I hope that those who haven't signed on for the conference for the legislative fly-in in May, if you can, will consider it. I'm starting to get appointments together with ACL, DOJ. I reached out to. We have some committee staffers. And once we get a couple of those first key appointments, I'm going to send out information for people to make their meetings with states. But my goal is to have the people who are going to DC also contribute to the meetings with the federal agencies, if possible, so that we can really hear your stories and get you started on that level of advocacy outside of the state in the federal buildings. So, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a
Okay,
good
bye-bye.
night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.